Good evening. Welcome here to Family Matters tonight. This evening we have Ben and Ellie Wilsnut with us, all the way from Hamilton, the Tron, and they're going to be talking about good foundations for the early years of marriage. And Ben and Ellie have got a really neat story to tell of their relationship and how it's grown and blossomed over the years. They've been married 3.5 years.
Still in the early years.
So still in the early years. They've got baby number 1 on the way, which is very exciting. So yeah, we're looking forward to talking to them tonight. So welcome, Ben and Ellie. How did you both meet?
So we met at an Easter camp, or what, when we were about 17 odd?
Yep, give or take.
Give or take. Yeah, I was just at the Easter camp, and Ellie, it was the first camp you went to, wasn't it? Came with her friend Caitlin, and yeah, we met at the camp and started talking and found we had a bit in common, and then we became good friends from there. So
Cool.
yeah, you want to know how it started?
That's how it started. Easy, right? Pretty basic. So what attracted you to each other?
I think definitely for me it was, she was just so easy to talk to. Like, it was the sort of person that you could just talk and talk and talk and not realize where the time has gone. We never had a silent moment. And I was the kind of person I felt I could open up to, I suppose. I don't know what it was like for you.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty similar. I mean, I guess Ben kind of struck me as the sort of person who was nothing too like daredevil, because I'm a bit of a safe, play it by the rules kind of safe, sort of sheltered person. But enough that it was like, he was willing to, go for a swim in the sea and do kind of stuff a little bit more spontaneous, but nothing too scary at the same time. So it was nice to sit there and go, oh yeah, he kind of seems like fun, like nothing too scary, but kind of enough to kind of keep you testing your comfort zones in some ways. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing for both of us was it was to find somebody that you sit there and go, oh my gosh, it's so easy to talk to this person, and conversations just happen out of nowhere. And especially for me, going to my camp, to find somebody who, every conversation you have is kind of like, hi, how are you? What's it like? How are you finding the camp? End of conversation. And so talking to Ben, it was kind of like, we talked about all sorts of random subjects. And it's like, I guess, yeah, being a first camp, it made a big impact, sitting there going, oh, I can actually really get along with somebody. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So just backing up a bit, Ellie, so you didn't come from a Christadelphian background. You were a school friend of Caitlin. So obviously along the way, your relationship with God had to develop. So you found that you sort of, that sort of worked in tandem with your growing relationship with Ben? How did that sort of work?
I guess so. I mean, I have to admit, like, my initial intentions for attending camps and attending CYC was quite selfish, in the sense that I wasn't attending for God, I was attending for the fact that I enjoyed the people that were there, and I enjoyed the opportunity to make friends. And there was something really, to me, appealing about a group of people who didn't go to parties and didn't, do drugs, because I didn't fit into that group at school. And so you kind of felt a little bit outcasted unless you knew the kind of people that you were looking for. So my initial intentions of attending things was quite selfish in that sense, but as you can imagine, it grew over time to sit there and go, you get an understanding of God and what he does for you, and you start to see him working in your life, even in the smallest ways. Yeah, so I don't know, I feel like I'm not really.
So having a Bible, the Bible as a background in Ben's life, was that something you also found attractive? Was that something that was quite appealing, having that Bible basis?
I suppose it was kind of more, I wasn't into like the drugs and the drinking and the partying, and it just didn't interest me. And I think for you, that's probably what more.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of what felt like I had something in common with Ben, is the fact that neither of us were into that stuff. And you kind of attend a Christadelphian camp and nobody's really into that stuff. But yeah, I guess there is a level in which when you're I've never really dated anybody outside of the truth, in all honesty. But it was nice to meet people and see people like, I don't know, like Ben, who they kind of had a moral standing, and you sit there and go, I don't feel like he's going to try and take advantage of me, or that sounds really weird, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's someone who you can trust.
Yeah. I guess there was that
You know
natural
they're like,
sit there and feel, you just feel a little bit safer. You sit there and go like, I don't know, they kind of have other people's best intentions at heart. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how long were you dating for? How long were you going out?
So we were engaged for 1 year.
Yeah, about 2 months.
We were together for 3 when we got married. So about 2 years, somewhere around there.
2 years dating and 1 year engaged.
Yeah, about 10 months engaged.
10 months.
Yeah.
So just a question on that was, what do you reckon about that time frame for engagement? Was that like you had 10 months? When we were engaged, we had 9 months. Do you reckon that was too long or too short? Like we found it that was long for us. But I know other couples.
When we were engaged, it felt like it was forever.
Mm.
It felt like our wedding was never going to come, and it just kept on dragging on and on and on.
Yeah. And in some ways, like, I don't know, you hear of other people who had an engagement that was literally like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, and that feels really quick. But I guess at the end of the day, we were always warned, like, be careful. Like, it is really exciting being engaged. And I know that I tell friends of mine who, or have told friends of mine that are considering getting engaged, like, you know, don't hold it off just because, you know, whatever. Like, if you want to get engaged, then get engaged. Because it is really exciting to walk somewhere and go, this is my fiance and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely a case of, we waited 10 months because we wanted to get married in January, mostly for the weather. And by the time you're about 3 months into the engagement, you sit there and go, honestly, I'd get married tomorrow, and it could be thunderstorms. And it really doesn't bother me. But we were definitely warned, like, be careful, the longer you're engaged, the harder it gets. And I can definitely vouch for that, like, especially and I'm sure probably for any time frame it gets hard, but especially when you've been waiting that long and it's, you know, 1 week to your wedding, you sit there and go, we're so close, but you still have to stay so strong.
Yeah. So did you set boundaries? Did you set boundaries in your relationship when you were going out?
To be honest, we had, you know, the standard mental boundaries of, you know, no sex, essentially. But aside from that, probably not really.
Yeah.
It was just something we didn't really talk about. And we probably should have.
Yeah. On that note, we sit there and go, I mean, I know this was brought up last night, the idea that the problem with dating is that there's no like given time as when you should bring up boundaries. And so whether it's the 1 month mark or whatever, is you sit there and go, oh yeah, we should probably talk about how far is too far. But it doesn't really, for us, we never really came across that moment. It was the sort of thing you kind of found out in some ways the hard way. One of you would sit there and go, after, I don't know, something happened, you sit there and go, I think that was a bit too far. I don't want to, you know, get that carried away next time. But engagement was, in some ways for us, gave us the opportunity to openly and easily discuss like redefining boundaries, instead of they're thinking like, okay, we've got to stick it in for the long haul. We've been warned how hard it is to be engaged, especially like, you know, we're meant to be having quite a long engagement. What kind of things are we going to be aware of? What kind of, like, do we need to reverse boundaries that we've potentially crossed? You know, are we being realistic with the boundaries? That kind of stuff. So we didn't have them in dating, and we both agree that it would have been nice to have them, or interesting to see how it could have turned out with them. But engagement, we definitely reevaluated, and I think it was easier, but also a good idea.
Yeah. So you did find that really helpful, you know, evaluating boundaries at that point in time?
Yeah, it definitely gives you the opportunity to sit there and go, I guess mentally preparing. And I've always explained it to friends of mine. Again, we kind of got married before several of our friends got married, so it gave us the chance to sit there and go, please try and learn from the mistakes that we made. And it's one of those things, having talked about boundaries, even if it's the sort of thing you might not want to discuss with your parents at a really young age before it even becomes an issue, just so that if you ever come to that moment, you kind of have that flashing light that sits there and goes, I think I'm going a bit far. Because if you don't discuss them, you don't have any sort of line that you're crossing.
Yeah. Definitely.
So what would you say to, what would be your advice to someone who's going out at the moment? You know, if you've got a young couple who's going out before they get engaged, what sort of, would you encourage them to have that discussion? Or would you say, well, wait till you're engaged?
I would say probably the sooner the better. I suppose because that way it's out on plain paper. Everyone knows where they're at. There's no questioning that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's sort of a bit awkward in a way because you're sort of presuming you're going to go a bit further, I suppose.
Yeah. So I suppose once you both kind of reach that stage where you will, you know, reach that stage of, I think I'm in this for the long haul now. You know, I feel like this is going somewhere. I would say you should be having that talk, and didn't have that talk until we got engaged, and by that stage we're really in for the long haul.
And I think that's a question that often comes up as well. Is like I remember being like freshly married, and people ask, you know, is it like, was it worth the wait? Because obviously that's often the biggest one, and a lot of people say, you know, well, we're already engaged, you know, we know we're going to get married, or they might not be engaged and say, we're going to get married, we know it's going to happen. You know, if we're that committed to each other, do you think it makes a difference to wait or to, you know, if you're kind of mentally committed, is it really a difference? And it's kind of hard to explain why, because your in-laws are sitting on the other side of the camera. But you sit there and go like, sort of thing, you do sit there and go, yes, I do genuinely feel it was worth the wait, even for the mental side of it. The relationships that I'm aware of where they didn't have the opportunity to wait, it didn't kind of plan out like they hoped it would. Often the guilt got to them before the relationship actually was, like, you know, sealed as such. And so it's amazing how carried away we can convince ourselves that something's okay, and then it doesn't take long for our conscience to kick in and go, you've taken that too far, and it can start to undermine a lot of stuff. You question everything. And so even just that sense of it, I would sit there and go, you know, or to people that asked, it was definitely worth the wait, because if you're that committed, is it really worth? It's such a small sacrifice to wait until you know it's approved by God in that kind of sense.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember being at a camp and being left behind one evening whenever all the kids went out, and we were left behind with a few couples. There was about three couples, and we were all just having this heart-to-heart talk around a big pot of custard that we were stirring, and we all came to the conclusion that there was stuff that we regretted in our relationships. None of us had sex before marriage, but we'd all regretted how far we'd gone. And that was every single one of us. And, you know, from a number of different relationships. And, you know, I'm just really, like you, I know, really keen to get that message across that says, you know, keep yourself pure until you get married. It's so important, and it saves all those regrets.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing that we found is when we did our pre-marriage classes with you guys, and we found them, like, they were interesting, and it's the sort of thing I would like. I'm not saying they have to do them with Rob and Sharon, but I would definitely recommend them, because it makes you consider stuff that you kind of just brush under the rug or don't think about, and it's the little things that tend to trip you up in your first couple of years, like, I don't know, sticking your socks in the washing basket.
Crochet needle.
I'm never going to be forgiven for that.
Never.
We'll come to that one soon.
But yeah, like when we were doing our marriage classes with you, it touched on the subject of why we don't press the red button. But it's a shame, I know Ben and I both thought it's a shame that we're being told this now, when really, normally by the time people get to their state of engagement, they've potentially already crossed a lot of the boundaries that we're warned not to. And it's simple things like there's a psychological thing of even just kissing is amazing, how your brain really cannot differentiate that between kissing and full-blown red button. But it's little things like that. I feel it's hard to bring up, I'm sure, as we're not parents and we don't know how that is, but it's a conversation I feel like we possibly are lacking, and there's a lot of young people can get into hot water because we actually don't know any better, and we aren't given the reasons as to why we're asked to wait, other than because God said so, which when you're a young teenager, it's not normally quite enough.
Yeah. So what sort of things do you recommend in a dating or in your engagement time that really helps to get to know each other, and you know, in a really good and wholesome way that's really, really helpful? What did you find helpful for yourselves?
For us, well, obviously talking is a big one. You know, like going out to the dates wasn't helpful. Oh, going out on dates to the movies wasn't helpful. But
Yep.
when you can actually just walk around the block or do a bush walk and just talk, you know, and get that communication going is probably really helpful. And I think for us, most helpful was actually organizing things together, as when we realized whether we were compatible or not.
Yeah.
As when you have to.
So what sort of things did you organise?
Well, it could have been anything from, you know, an activity with CYC, and so you both kind of have to work together to arrange a venue and to arrange what time and what people need to bring, and so you kind of tend to divvy up roles and responsibilities. But even like, I know for me, I found it really beneficial for when we might have gone to June weekend, and me living in Auckland, I would take a couple of people down to Hamilton, then we'd pick up some more people from Ben's CYC, and we'd go the rest of the way from Hamilton down to Wellington. And it was really cool getting to see how we worked, like separately but also together. Like I was in charge of arranging the Auckland crew, and he would arrange Hamilton. We had to meet somewhere in the middle, make sure everybody was prepared. What did we do if somebody had forgotten a pillow? Like all that kind of stuff. In some ways it was kind of like parenting 101, but it was little things like that where we got to sit there and go, you get to see people's strengths and weaknesses. And so I don't know, it's hard to explain, like Ben was always the driver, and so that's kind of little aspects where I got to sit there and go, okay, so in married life I'm quite content not to drive, and Ben is more than happy to drive, so I was okay with that.
It also helps that I get car sick unless I'm driving.
Yeah, aspects like that really gave us the opportunity and to actively be looking, is this somebody that I get along well with? Because I'm not sure about you guys, but I do seriously consider how even just simple CYC team building is a big tell onto how that works. And if you end up in a screaming match over building a sandcastle, you possibly have bigger things to work through than just marriage.
Yeah, or sandcastles.
Yeah. So when we were chatting with you yesterday, you were talking about how really helpful it was for you both to spend time with each other's families.
Oh yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about
that. Yeah, so because Ali was from Auckland, from Hamilton, when we saw each other, we went up for the entire weekend. And so I would stay at Ali's parents' place at when I went up, and she would stay at Mum and Dad's when she came down. And it meant we got to see the family dynamic, I suppose you would call it. See that whether or not we actually got along with the other person's family. Because it's one thing getting on with, you know, the partner, the girl, the guy, but getting on with the family is actually just as important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was like little things, like I'd go to Rob and Carol's, and yeah, it was the sort of thing, I'd show up Friday night, wouldn't leave till probably Sunday after dinner, and so it really was like you spent 24/7 for a couple of days with this person. And I got to see, like, you know, Carol cooked dinner, she did this, that and the other thing, Rob kind of did these roles, and so whether it was subconscious or conscious, I got to see more or less where Ben got his family lifestyle and probably what he was going to expect from that. And I was more than happy to sit there and go, yeah, I'm happy to be the one that cooks dinner, saying that we're pretty, but in saying that, in our own marriage, we haven't replicated to a T either of our family's dynamics, but it was even little things like I have the subconscious expectation that Ben's the one who cooks steak. And as much as we've never verbalized it, he's kind of picked up on it. And so it was aspects of, I don't know, I guess it was easy in the sense that because we were having a long distance relationship, that was sort of the option for us. And we really valued, like I really appreciated that Rob and Carol were able to take me for the weekend because I got to see them. Well, I got to see Ben, but I also got to know them. And we see them, what, 2 to 3 times a week, if not more. And so it's really nice getting to see them on that level and not feeling like you're just dumped into having to know the in-laws straight after marriage at the same time. And so it'd be the sort of thing like if like parents and the couples were comfortable with that, even if you were both living in the same city, if you could have the opportunity to spend the entire weekend staying with their family, it's really beneficial to see the dynamics and how that works. And even small things like, you know, do they do the readings at night? Is the dad the one who always does the prayers? You know, who kind of is the little details that help you to work through the bigger issues in marriage? Well, not, I don't know, for us, issues are probably different issues, but
yeah. So talk to us about, you know, your early years of marriage, you know, beginning stages of marriage. Were there challenges?
I think for us the biggest challenge was, other than the standard trying to figure out your roles, I know it was a challenge for me. Ellie had like emotions and stuff.
Oh, you did it, did you, Ellie?
yes, what
I grew up in a family that we didn't really show our emotions very much. Like, I don't know what we did. We must have bottled them up or something, but, you know, showing emotions wasn't really a thing. And then we got married and, like, Ellie cried. And I'm sitting there going, I've broken her! What have I done? Like, we just got married and she's crying and I don't know what I did. And I thought I broke her. And so that there was like, yeah, sort of moment. But yeah.
And like, yeah, I guess that's just like, I guess you'd call it teething of like early stages of marriage is the hardest thing, is often getting to see people on a more deeper and emotional level, because if they were having a hard time at work, you didn't see them during the weekday. Or for me, I didn't see him during the weekday, so I didn't know what it was like for him to be stressed. And little things like Ben not putting his socks in the washing basket was the sort of thing we kind of learnt, well, how do you bring that up as a newly married wife without looking like an absolute ogre, because it's just socks. Like little things like that, it's like just teething issues, like how do you bring that up and not become a victim, but also not play the blame game and all kinds of little things. And for Ben, like when I am crying, because I still do, I'm better, but like what does he do, what helps, what doesn't help, that kind of stuff. It was getting to see the emotion of the other partner that you don't get to see, I don't know, unless you really are living with them.
So Ben, give us some advice. Those of us who are husbands need this advice. What do you do when your wife is crying and she looks like she's broken?
Run! Run! What I found worked for me, after a lot of trying to fix her, because I'm a mechanic, and when something's broken, I fix it. So after a lot of trying to fix her, I realized that isn't actually what she needed. What I found she kind of more needed was just straight out support. Go in there with a cup of tea. Like if you see that she is crying, go in there with a cup of tea, ask her what's wrong, be there to listen with her, and let her know that you're there. And then, to be honest, I just kind of let her cry, let her be with her emotions a wee bit. And just kind of come back out into the lounge and do whatever and just check on her, make sure she's okay. But I've kind of semi given up on the thing of trying to fix her, because
Okay.
Is that helpful, Ellie?
Yeah, I'd say, well, I think what we've discovered is normally I'm quite a rational person, but there are particular times of the month when I'm a little bit more irrational. And so a lot of the time I was crying, it was completely, there was no reason behind it. And in the sense of, one of the reasons Ben probably felt like he broken me is that I had no idea why I was crying. And so it was stupid things, like I could be absolutely fine, and then 2 minutes later I'd be absolutely bawling my eyes out. And I remember beating, like, you know, literally beating yourself up mentally, being like, why are you crying? You're so dumb. There's no reason to cry. You're absolutely happy. He's not doing anything. Why are you crying? And it wasn't directed at Ben in any way, but was Ben what was saying about how he kind of said, you know, it's okay, you know, just come out when you're ready. It's no dramas. I'm just going to be here. Give me a shout if you want a blanket, or, you know, do you want a hug or anything? It was amazing how I could see the progression and how quickly I actually started to get over that. And it's much, like, you kind of feel like it's more normalized, especially when I couldn't put my finger on why I was sad. And so for Ben to sit there and go, it's okay, you know, like, I still love you, like, I know you don't know what you're going through right now, but it's okay, like, I'm over here if you need me, kind of made me feel like it was okay to feel broken. And so it made it much faster in that sense for me to get over it, because I didn't feel like, I wasn't beating myself up as much for not knowing what was wrong. And so, yeah, in that sense, that made a big difference for me. But that's the hard thing. Like, my tears were probably, again, like, it was probably hormonal, just irrational, kind of no reason to cry. So I got over it in a similar manner to why I started crying in the first place, which is potentially different to when there is something like actually wrong, and it's more than just not putting your socks in the washing basket. Yeah.
But yeah, we did find there was one particular reason that did make it quite rough on our newly wed marriage, I suppose. And when we got married, or just before we got married, we decided for Ali to go on the pill for obvious reasons. And what we didn't realize is it played havoc with her hormones. And you found that you would be happy as 1 second, and then the next second you would just feel depressed and bawling your eyes out for, as she said, she couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
Similar issue. Yeah, and there's, I don't know, I guess there are aspects in which, like, that those kind of contraceptives don't work for everybody, and there's a lot of different options out there, but it was one of those things, like, I don't feel like they always tell you about the side effects, and for us that was a massive side effect. And especially for the first, like, 6 months to a year of marriage, we had absolutely no idea why I was so upset, and it really made it difficult for us to feel like we were happy and we'd made the right decision when we had additional factors kind of playing into it, on top of simple things like finding a routine, whose role it was to put out the rubbish, you know, and that kind of stuff. Making up your own methods while living together is hard enough on its own, let alone when you've got other factors.
Yeah. So did you ever have any point where you went, what have I done? Who have I married? You know, did you ever have a point where you were, really wondering what you got yourself into?
What have I done now? I've committed to it for the rest of my life.
I think we all go through little thoughts of like that, but to be honest, they got shut down pretty quick. Whereas I just sat there going, no, you're being an idiot. Like, you got the best girl you could ever have. Like, you know, I'd never had any thoughts, like any long-lasting regrets about any of our marriage or any of our relationship.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we brought it up last night about the idea that I think we've lived a very privileged life. In a lot of ways, we feel like we're not really qualified to even be considering this topic for good foundations for early marriage, because we've had it really, really easy in a lot of ways. Like, you look at what some people have gone through, and I sit there and go, I feel guilty for saying it, but part of me is almost waiting for God to pull the rug out from underneath me and sit there and go, you know, you've had it pretty good till now, but you know, here's your hard patch. And so like having our families, like both mine and Ben's families, are incredibly supportive, and they're both really rational people. So like I'm not gonna go, no, we both got people to sit there and go, we don't know what we're doing with this. Is this normal? Did you guys struggle with this? It was nice to have people around us who, you know, have obviously been married for several years and could sit there and go, you know, we struggle with that too. It's completely normal. You kind of get through that. Yeah. So.
I think having our families there were probably the most important thing of our marriage as well, or at least one of the most important. Like, it's amazing how much we still rely on our parents.
It's interesting actually how I feel like as teenagers you kind of like rebel and sit there and go, my parents are dumb, what do they know? They're like 150, they don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's like to be my age, that kind of idea. And then for us getting married, it was almost like a
they
switch.
suddenly grew brain cells and they knew what they were talking about.
Yeah, and then they I think we rely on our parents more, like for their advice, their kind of wisdom, their help. I mean, Rob and Carol come and help us with all kinds of things, like moving sparkles and other bits, all the time. And it's the sort of thing that's like we rely on them constantly.
That is pretty much a 24-hour hotline.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. And so I guess, like, I know there's a couple of parents that I saw sitting on there, and it would be the sort of thing of, if I was to say anything to a parent, it would say, just because your kids have got married, don't at all treat it like the birds have left the nest, kind of like hands off. In any case, like the first years of marriage especially, they need you more than ever because they have no idea what they're doing, and they have no idea what they're doing. And so like having that support and being invited around for dinner like you normally would have, or coming around for them to dinner at their place is really exciting. Like even now, it's really exciting when we have people over for dinner. We're like, oh, we're like adults.
Well, you are like adults. You are adults.
But on that note, how much involvement is good, and how much, you know?
How much is too much?
Yeah.
Because you do hear of a lot of stories of in-laws, you know, that the proverbial in-law who's sort of like Frankenstein marching into the house. And,
I think we said before about it's important to get along with the family. And for both of us, we both get on with the family. And so our social life is actually our family. So like neither of our parents really push themselves on into our personal matters or anything. They don't push, but we kind of go to mum and dad.
Yeah, so I think in a nutshell it would be the case of, it's the sort of thing that normally we're the ones to bring it up. Like they can ask, oh, how's your day going? And if I want to get something off my chest, I'll bring that up whether they ask me or not. And there is a level where you sit there and go, there are some things that should remain in a marriage, and sometimes as a parent you probably need to sit there and go, I'm not comfortable with how much you're telling me. But yeah, I guess it's the sort of idea, like I really appreciate how they don't pry whatsoever. In any case, I probably open up too easily. So in that sense, it's nice to know that the support's there if we need it or ask for it.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, but I'm sure if they were to look from a distance and sit there and go, you guys are really going down an interesting path, that they'd probably intervene. I don't know if they'd have like a whole sit us down and whatever, have a massive talk, but they'd probably just kind of start to give you hints and pointers. I'm not sure if that's a great method that you're using or whatever. But yeah, parents are definitely kind of like the guidebook to marriage because they've done it before you. They know what doesn't work. They know what works best. Yeah, gives you something to work with.
Yeah, it's awesome. So what have you both done to grow spiritually together?
Ellie, that's all you.
So I guess you know how they say that you've got like a spiritual journey, and it kind of has like hills and valleys of how well you're doing. And when you're married, it's not like you just suddenly become one big hill and valley. You just have completely different hills and valleys. So there are moments where Ben is on like a great spiritual high, and he's like, yeah, we should do this, and we should listen to a talk on the way up to Auckland, and blah 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 blah, and puts his hand up for organising. And there's other times when he's kind of at a bit of a flat line, and I'll be the one to be doing that, and you sort of drag the other one through your enthusiasm. But yeah, I wouldn't really say we've got an answer to that one. We're still kind of figuring that one out. We don't have a method. It's still we're kind of going through our highs and lows. Sometimes we're at the same point together, but a lot of the time we're kind of opposite ends or halfway in the middle. So if you guys have suggestions, we're all ears.
But it is good. It is good that even, you know, if you do have your highs and lows, what's happening with your marriage, well, from what you describe, is that the highs are pulling the other one.
Yeah.
We pull that way. Works better on the screen.
And saying that, like, the meeting and Bible class and, you know, spiritual things like that are still the most, like, the guiding point in our lives. Like, they are still the most important thing in our lives.
Yeah.
And yes, we all go through spiritual highs and spiritual lows, but in terms of going to the meeting and praying and the bare basic stuff like that, it is still the most important things in our lives.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah,
sometimes
that you've made that a priority for yourselves then.
Yeah, I was like, even little thing, the first time Ben or one of us was sick on a Wednesday night and they couldn't go to Bible class, it was kind of this weird moment where you suddenly have to make a decision about, am I going to go to Bible class without them? Am I allowed to do that? Are they going to think we're getting divorced? Like, it's these little things you overanalyze something so simple. And we decided that if one of us couldn't go to Bible class, the other one would. I mean, there's no reason to put your spiritual life before just because of their illness. Like, if Ben was absolutely bedridden and it was unsafe to leave him home alone, then you take that one as it goes. But little things like that, if I guess that was a decision that we made as well. It was, you know, we would still attend things even if the other one wasn't able to, because like going to the meeting or our spiritual life, at the end of the day, you want to get to the kingdom together, but it's also a personal journey for each of us. And so that was something that, I don't know, again, something you don't necessarily consider talking about pre-marriage until it happens and you suddenly have to make up your mind in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, like we still attend CYC, and we've kind of been discussing or not whether we'll continue once we've got a baby. Are we still going to do Sunday school once we've got a kid? All that kind of stuff changes based on your circumstances. And I know most of the reason we still continue to attend our CYC is that we don't have super high numbers, and so it's really easy for two people to go missing, and all of a sudden the CYC is halved in number. We're not quite that small, but you notice people are missing, and so the last it stopped going. And then when the 13-year-olds now get to 23, sit there and go, well, Ben and Ellie stopped going when they got married. You know, we're not married, but we're 23. Do we just stop going? And so I guess it's that idea as well. Like, you know, what sort of example are we setting for those below us or other people in our own age group? Just because we're married doesn't mean we don't need CYC, we don't need the socializing and all that kind of stuff that comes with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you are a great example. We've seen it. Yeah.
sometimes
Sorry?
sometimes we question that.
Have you had to deal with conflict? And what did you do about it?
To be utterly honest, neither me or Ellie like conflict.
Yeah.
Both of us are the sort of person that in conflict we back down. Which makes conflict kind of easy for us, because if anything gets into any sort of argument, we both go, nope, and hop in our little shells.
Yeah, which is time to wind down, take 5 minutes, sit there and go, yeah, I was being pretty irrational. you know, one of us normally reaches a point we feel the need to apologise. So we're very, very blessed in the sense that since neither of us enjoy screaming matches, neither of us start screaming matches. And so we've never, I wouldn't say we've really ever had an argument.
Not a big screaming, throwing thing argument anyway. Like we've had discussions and
disagreements.
And things we disagree on, but
and irritations like socks.
Yeah, little things, and you sit there and go, you just bring it up in a bit of a gruff voice, and they kind of get the idea.
And for the matter on the socks, the reason they're on the floor right next to the washing basket is because I throw them from the other side of the room and miss. And then I go back, pick them up, go back to the other side of the room, throw them again and miss again. And then by that stage, I really can't be bothered going to pick them up for a third time.
So it's pretty much basketball practice.
Yes, I'm not getting any better.
Yeah.
So does it help knowing that Ellie doesn't really like socks just lying on the floor? Does that help you sort of make the effort to put them in the washing basket?
It's kind of fun trying to see if you can get them in. I am getting better at putting them in the washing basket. I'm just not getting any better at throwing them in the washing basket.
Yeah, okay.
Fair enough.
Fine.
Yeah.
You do get annoyed by the time there's a pair in the bathroom because he had a shower, and then there's a pair or two next to the washing basket because he was throwing them, and then there's like 4 or 5 pairs next to or under the bed because that's where he took them off because he got into bed. And so you sort of get sick of them when you start pushing them around with a vacuum cleaner, and then he questions, why don't I have any clean socks? And you go, well, interesting enough, when they're not in the washing basket, they don't get washed. So,
Fair enough. I'm sure you'll work that one out. So.
Now, but at the time that was it felt like such a big topic to bring up, and I didn't want to be you know, bridezilla of any kind, especially when you sit there and go, it only took like a week of marriage to realize that that was an issue. But how do you bring that up when you sit there and go, we've only been married a week, I can't be an ogre yet? So
Give them another couple of months.
yeah.
And by then it sort of seems too late.
Yeah.
And I think that in some ways as well was one of those hardships that the teething issues with marriage is, again, like getting to see Ben when he was stressed, but also in the same way, beginning to see the warning signs of when I was doing something that pissed him off. But coming from a family where, you know, if they don't like something, they tend to bottle it up because they don't really want to upset the other person. So I very quickly had to learn his sort of signs and emotions to figure out when I was doing something to actually ask him before it became a big issue and it did become a disagreement. And, you know, or for me, like I might lash out about socks and you sit there and go, it's socks. But I'm like, yes, but I've been holding on to this for 3 months and I'm so over it. And yeah, so it was, yeah, one of those things where you sit there and go, it's about learning how, or what works best for us as a couple, how to bring up disagreements, what we don't like, niggly things before they become a big problem.
Yeah. So a couple of last questions. What advice would you give to a young couple who are thinking about going out or getting engaged or about to get married or just have got married? What sort of advice would you give to a couple? You're heading towards marriage, really?
I guess it would be reevaluate boundaries. I think that would be a really important one. Like that's one that I would not skip over lightly.
For me, it was also not listening to all those people, especially at work, that said marriage is dumb, that it's an outdated custom. You know, why are you getting married, sort of thing.
Well, you're so young, why didn't you just live with them?
Marriage to me is probably the best thing I ever did. Don't listen to all the people that say it's dumb, it's stupid. You know, you're too young.
Yeah, and in that same way, like
I'll second that. That was best
I'm
thing I ever did too.
very much an advocate for young marriage as well. Like I know it's easy for us because we were like 20 and 21, but it's nice to sit there and go, like the first time we moved out, we moved into a house together, and so we got to sit there and go, where do we want to put the cups? That's a dumb place to put the cups. little things like that where you get to build all the tiny steps. And it really is like you play little families as 5 and 6 year olds, and being married, like especially, I don't know, well, getting the first few years of marriage for us, even now, still feels like we're getting to play families for real life. Like you have people over for dinner and you have tea and coffee with people and you do baking and you make biscuits and all the little things that it feels like you are playing families in real life. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, that's, no, what else? Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So moving on, what would, you know, from your first few years of marriage, what advice would you give to newly married couples?
Or any couple to help them grow strong marriages.
Yeah.
I would definitely just say hang in there. For us, our relationship, it has only gotten better since we got married.
Yeah, and like the whole, like don't, like for us, the first 6 months to a year of marriage were the hardest of all. And again, a lot of it's teething issues. A lot of it was additional factors. But it's the sort of thing, like don't base it off the first 6 months.
Yeah, and you grow closer the longer you're with them, and you reach a stage where, you know, you can't see life without them. You know, you couldn't do life without them. You know, if they weren't there, you would sit there going, I don't know what to do. This is, you know, literally half of me is gone.
Well, I remember when we were dating, actually, somebody was saying to us, like, you know, you've reached a pretty serious point in your marriage or in your dating relationship when it gets to a point where just because they're not going to CYC, you sit there and go, what's the point of going? Like, you know, it's not going to be any fun if they're not going to be there. And it could be anything. It might not be CYC. It could be rock climbing. It could be anything. But because they're not going, you sit there and go, oh, well, I'll go. But, you know, it's not really the same. And it's kind of nice to sit there and think, like, you reach that point in your relationship and then you get to marriage and you, I don't know, I wouldn't say we're dependent on each other, but it is the sort of thing, like, it's just not the same. And so to reach that point in marriage where you sit there and go, you love this person to so many pieces that it's just not, it just, in a lot of ways, it doesn't feel like it's worth doing stuff without them. Like, you don't want to go and do something by yourself because it's way much more, that's good English, way better to go do it with them or take them along with you, because that's what you're doing, you're building life together. So yeah, really don't base it off the first 6 months of marriage, because that's potentially going to be, you know, teething issues.
That almost brought a tear to my eye, Ellie.
Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. Yeah, you've been really great, open and honest, and it's some fairly difficult and taboo subjects that we traverse in talking about this. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate that you've been willing to have this chat and yeah, share some of the highs and lows of what courtship and marriage has been so far for yourselves. So
yeah,
thank you.
That was really amazing. Thank you so much, both of you. And I know you will have been an inspiration to a lot of people tonight. So thank you for that. Looking toward next week, we have another exciting marriage topic, actually, what to do when you really mess up. So we've discovered tonight that Ben and Ellie sort of withdraw into their shell. We're going to find out from Doug and Cindy Mogg next week what to do when they really mess up. And I have a feeling they're both sort of the rhino character, so they're going to be. So that'll be really interesting. See that perspective. The following week we have another topic: twisting the cube, changing the paradigm, with Ron and Catherine Hoban. So that'll be a really interesting one. We're going to be looking at a story from their life.
Looking puzzled about what that means.
Yes.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. And if you want to receive any information, just email me at robert@thinkythings.com, and we will be able to, and I'll be able to put you on the Family Matters email list.